I look at the Eiffel Tower and I say, big lady, in 1 year, I come back with an athlete that is doing the Olympics.
Parallels between what an executive experiences and what a high performing athlete experiences.
If by the work we do, we manage to cure something, to improve attitude, behavior, feelings, emotions, fair enough. And that's also the goal.
They train 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. It becomes exhausting. It becomes stressful. It even becomes boring. Does personal life come into it in any capacity? Relationships?
Yeah.
Do you
There
have to
is.
go there?
I, ha- I have to go there.
Benjamin Benois, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks to you.
So tell me, Benjamin, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I am French. I'm from Paris, born and raised. So I lived in Paris until 20 years old. So that's my life in Paris until 20. Then many other adventures I can tell you about, but born and raised in Paris.
How would you describe your childhood?
Honestly, pretty healthy childhood. Loads of love around me. Loads of love around me. Can't complain. Lovable sister. Um, Very good parents. So very healthy and lovable childhood. Yeah, can't complain. It's good for me.
Um, when you went to college, you moved out of college, you graduated, you entered the world of technology, sales management, but you were also a coach, right? So tell
Yep.
me about the coaching work that you were doing.
So I actually started to coach very amateur level in football because that's the only sport I knew quite well. I played football when I was a kid, maybe from 6 to 14, and then at 14, you need to be very good to continue. I wasn't that good, but actually I went to live and study in Strasbourg, which is in the east of France. And that's where I started because of a silly injury. I started age 22 to coach the football team there. Actually, the indoor football team, very amateur level. Started, enjoyed it. I did 2 years, and then I went to study in the US. I did it again with the football. Well, there it's soccer, but the football club association during a year. Then I went to live in Dublin, Ireland, and then again, I wanted to continue to coach football teams. So I reached out to Trinity College to the president, and he told me, "Okay, come here, let's have a try. It works, and you stay." So I coached one of the football teams of Trinity College that you may know. And then after Trinity College, I moved to other divisions, other teams, until pretty much the best amateur division of football in Ireland. I was in the staff, and that's kind of my career as a football coach. 3 countries, few clubs, and that's how I started to enjoy the work, the job of coaching. Yeah.
When did mentality and how did mentality become one of the most important factors in
Yeah.
elite performance? When did you become aware of
Uh,
it?
so your question is about when I started to really enjoy that part of the coaching.
Plus, also, you must have figured out when you were coaching that
Okay. Okay.
mentality and
Yeah.
psychology is a really important part of what you're doing here.
Yeah. Um, I think the story is pretty cute. I started because you do amateur level, you don't have much knowledge, you're just learning by doing. So I started to understand that okay, you need to understand the tactical side and the physical side, but step by step, because it was very amateur level, I started to understand that the way you communicate to your team, any age, any nationality, the way do you communicate to your players, what you say, it's so important. It's key. And sometimes it's even more important than what you do on the pitch. So I'm very amateur level again. That's when I started to enjoy it, understanding the way how to approach your players, what to say, what to do. how to talk to each person, how to analyze the behavior, the attitude, the blockers. That's when I started to understand. Okay, there is a mental part of it, and step by step, that's when at one point I actually realized, maybe 1 year ago, that I was so passionate about that, the mental aspect of the performance.
What is mental coaching?
So before I give you an answer, I have to tell you that this is my view, my opinion of it. If you ask another mental coach, maybe you're gonna have another other type of answers. But for me, mental coaching, and I'll always refer as in sport, because that's what I do. I am a mental coach of professional sport athletes. So for me, mental coaching is the training in sport, is the training of your mental skills, abilities, capabilities in order to improve your performances. And while, and it's very important, this the next part of it, while ensuring the well-being of the athlete, the mental well-being of the athlete, ensuring that the athlete, feels a pleasure during training, during competition, and also ensuring the mental autonomy of the athlete.
And what would you say is the difference between what a mental coach does and what a psychologist does?
So I'm not a psychologist. That's what I can tell you. Um, I'm not a doctor, not a psychologist. I don't have the diplomas. But one of the main differences that I see is that the psychologist at one point is here to cure, to analyze, and to cure traumas. Really can go really deep traumas, maybe childhood traumas or adult traumas, which is not my job. It's not my job myself, because I'm in also the sport area. My goal is, at the end of the day, we have the same goal with the athlete, is to improve their performances. If by the work we do, we manage to cure something, to improve attitude, behavior, feelings, emotions, fair enough. And that's also the goal. But once, if I identify that something is, hidden behind and deeper, and that I could call maybe a trauma, then
Hmm.
it's not my job. I have to refer it to maybe a psychologist. Those are the main differences.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because anxiety and performance anxiety would be something that comes up, and extreme levels of anxiety and stress management could be related to childhood traumas. So at that point, you would say, okay, you would refer your client, or you
It
would.
depends. It depends, because it's not a perfect science. I,
Mm,
I have to be honest with you. Maybe on some discussions, the athlete will have the exact same discussion with the psychologist, exact same. Then
mm,
it's for me to figure it out. Okay, until this point, we did everything. Now I can't help anymore. Maybe there is a need of a, a medical professional. But it's true that maybe we can cross on many discussions about how to manage better your stress, your anxiety, and your emotions, because I talk about that with my athletes. Yeah,
so, say for example, can you give me an idea of the kind of people that you've worked with so far in terms of athletes? You've worked
yeah,
with,
yeah, yeah.
across different sports, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So far, because I've started my we can call it, yeah, my own business of mental coaching. I did only different sports. I didn't pick so far a niche. Maybe at one point, few months, few years, but I've worked with, for example, trail runners.
Mm,
You know, those long races and run in the mountains. So I work with someone from the French team, French national team, French champion one time, twice vice world champion. I worked with American football player, professional one, Spanish guy, because I also, as I speak three languages, I can work with different kind of nationalities. I worked with also para athletes, so athletes that have impairments. I worked with a player from the national USA team of soccer, para soccer team. Right now, in this moment, I'm actually working with an Irish lad, para athlete, track cyclist. He's actually, we are working together for him to qualify for the Olympics, Paralympics in Paris. And actually, I have two new athletes coming right now. It's going to be my first session with her, Canadian athlete. She did the Olympics in Tokyo. She ran the 400 meters. She also ran the 4 by 400 meters with her team. She finished fourth in Tokyo, and of course, her goal is to qualify also for the Olympics in Paris. And then I have a very brand new athlete. I got the news last week. I'm gonna work with a team, a couple of ice skaters, professional ice skaters, and their kind of long-term goal is to qualify for the Winter Olympics in Milan in 2026.
Okay, so you're based in Asia, so the work that you're doing is over
Yeah.
Zoom, right? So it's online. Can you describe the process and specifically the initial assessment? How would you
Yeah.
do an initial assessment here?
So now the process. Whenever I'm gonna work with a new athlete, first of all, before we have our first session together, we're just gonna meet, like you and me 1 week ago when we talked about the podcast. We're gonna meet, and I'm gonna explain what is mental coaching, what are my beliefs about mental coaching, what's the purpose, and then the whole, how the sessions are going to work, and obviously because it's also my job, what's the financial aspect of it. um, and I need to ensure two things before I start working with an athlete. I need to ensure that the athlete feels the need of working with a mental coach. It's not a half need, really. They need to feel the need that they need that support. And second, that they are ready to commit. Because as you commit for your physical training, as you commit for your tactical training, you need to commit for with your mental coach and come to the sessions. Because so many athletes will miss any session with their physical coach. It's the same thing, and sometimes even more important. So that's the thing. And then when we start the sessions, then the first session, I call it the discovery session. It's a longer one, no exercises, no meditation, no relaxation, just me analyzing and understanding, okay, what's their sport history, how they see themselves, what's their perception of themselves, why do they do this sport, what do they enjoy, there may be blockers, their difficulties, how do they usually manage their emotions, and also their habits based on few points: the sleep, the hydration, how do they eat, their social life. And then at one point, I can trigger that actually pretty fast, because usually they're gonna share so many information. We decide a main goal together. A main goal together, for example, could be, okay, I want to really be more positive on the pitch. For example, I want to manage better my emotions because it's really, really blocking me to perform better. Those kind of core goals, and then this will help us to work really step by step to work on that.
Do you find that does personal life come into it in any capacity? Relationships?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you
There
have to
is.
go
I,
there?
I, ha- I have to go there, but I don't go on my own.
Mm.
I ask them questions, we discuss, and whenever we're gonna discuss, they're gonna talk about personal life, because my goal is for, sometimes I focus more on the person than the athlete. And I'm gonna tell you why, because usually, not all of the athletes, but what I can trigger, usually the athlete, the person see themselves only as an athlete. I live as an athlete. If I perform good, then I'm a good human being. If I perform bad, I'm a bad human being. And they can go up and down really fast. But my goal is to make them understand they are a person first before being an athlete, a performer.
Do you get any resistance? So, what's the relationship, your relationship, like with their actual coach, their team coach, or their performance coach at the club or the sport?
So my relationship with their coach.
Yeah.
So I think it's it's good and it's better if I can talk to their coach right
Yeah.
away the first time. First of all, to have the the coach story side.
Mm,
Okay, what's the coach story? Because maybe the athlete is gonna analyze something about themselves. They're gonna tell me a story, but I want to make sure that on their coach part, it's kind of the same story. If it's
mm,
not, I need to talk to the coach to also understand what's their opinion about that. What do they think? What did they analyze before? And of course, but I always ask the athlete before,
mm.
because we know there is confidentiality, there is trust, but it's always better if we can work together as a team to really help the athlete to grow in performance, because that's the final goal.
You mentioned confidentiality and ethics
Yeah,
there. Does that
yeah,
is that part of the conversation when you're starting out with them? I mean, I presume
yeah, yeah,
athletes would be concerned.
yeah, yeah, definitely. We talk about, okay, this is a relationship of trust. Of course, you don't build the trust in 1 hour. It's going to be step by step. Confidentiality, of course. That's why I need to ask them for their green light, because some athletes, they don't have such a good relationship with their coach. So some athletes will tell me, for now, I wish not that you share with my coach what we are talking about, you and me. I need their green light. But yeah, confidentiality is a thing. If you are my athlete, it's just between you and me. And if you accept, we're gonna include at some point uh, the coach, the physical coach.
What is the biggest? Is there one factor that seems to be presenting more than others in terms of anxiety? Is it anxiety? Is it stress? Is it performance anxiety? Among the people you've worked with, is there a common thread? Is it confidence?
Um, so there are so many topics, but the core topics, four, five, six, and then subtopics. But usually the core topics that we mention, we work on, are going to be how to manage better management of stress, anxiety, inner talk, self-confidence slash self-esteem, self-perception. And for me, I really put the how to cultivate the positivity even on another part. It's really important for me. So those are the core topics. Of course, you have subtopics, but each athlete is distinctive. Each athlete is different, and each athlete has a different story. But I'm gonna say that the management of stress, management of anxiety, and management how to manage better emotions in different situations, rather during training, before the race, before the game, during the game, or after, that's gonna come back quite a lot. Yeah.
What techniques would you use then to help them during performance to
Um,
get those
yeah.
stress levels and anxiety levels down?
Yeah. So, and actually, I think it's very important that your questions are focused on that topic, because before I go on any of the topics that I mentioned, before I go on all those topics, I'm gonna go on this topic first: management of stress, anxiety, and emotions, because I want to make sure that the athlete has more tools, has all the tools, tips, tools, habits to manage better anxiety and stress and emotions. Because if he doesn't, then whatever we're going to talk about, that this is not going to be that much qualitative, because we can talk about other topics, but then if they don't manage their stress and emotions, they're going to forget about it all. So first, that's my first thing. After the first session, the second session, we're going to talk about that. What do I do? So usually we are going to do exercises of um, relaxations, different kind of relaxations. So movement relaxations, dynamic relaxations that comes from pretty much yoga. It's a mixture between yoga, so slow movements, and a mixture of slow yoga and breathing. So we're gonna start slow. You always need to start very, very slow. Some athletes, they did that in the past, but most of the athletes, they don't know, they have no clue. So we start with dynamic relaxation, some movements, while some technical breathing, always abdominal breathing, And then we're going to move to static relaxations, closing your eyes, feeling your breathing, feeling your body. And that's the first step. And then step by step, we can move really step by step by some very, very easy visualization about your body. Then we can go deeper. And then we can go after a few sessions, if we advanced on the right way, to meditation. So we can talk about all of that while also talking about breathing techniques that they can do on their own. Everything I'm going to do with the athletes, I'm going to ask them, I'm going to request from them to do that on their own. I'm going to do actually a mental training planning, weekly planning for them. As the physical coach, I'm going to ask them to do that on their own so they can train.
One of the things that stresses, one of the biggest stressors for athletes is seeing a picture or something happening in an event that they hadn't anticipated. And this can really throw them. Do you work, would visualization come in there? Would you work on that side of things as well? How important do you think that is?
So there are two things I like to differentiate. So say there are two parts. There is the mental training, all of exercises, and then sometimes I like to differentiate, say, mental coaching, which are kind of habits, behavior that you can have, way of thinking you can have, different kind of perception you can have. So I'm gonna also trigger and maybe make the athlete understand on how to perceive things, how to take distance with with results, with what's happening, with how to behave regarding all those distractions, internal, external, um, and also, every day cultivate your positivity, because that's something really difficult. Most of the athletes, most of the time, they're gonna fail. Most of the time, they're gonna fail, and small percentage, they're gonna be first and they're gonna win usually. So that's pushes the negativity around, negativity on the morning, at night, etc. So first, we're gonna talk about habits, how to perceive things, and how to cultivate more positivity. And then the other part, yeah, we can we can try to um, work on some visualization. Um, some visualization. So let's say once we do easy visualization, then at one point we might work on visualization the athlete on the racing track, visualizing some emotions, be used to the emotions, be used to the distractions around, feel the colors, feel the sounds, the senses. So the athlete is used to that. I don't. Maybe in one of your next questions, I can explain to you what's happening while we do visualization in
Hmm.
the body, how it's so powerful. But yeah, we're gonna use also some visualization.
So how answer that question then there? How is
Yeah.
visualize? Why is it so powerful?
So if again, step by step, so important. I'm gonna do visualization from the first session with my athlete.
Mm.
No rush, but it's actually when you do it correctly at one point, and it's scientific. If you train, if you do it correctly, at one point, your body is not gonna do so much difference between you being on the track or you being in your bed, because you visualize so much details. You use so much your senses and you train that it's actually extremely close to um, the reality. So it doesn't replace physical training. It doesn't replace my athlete running her 400 meters on the
Mm.
track. Doesn't replace, but it's an added training, and it's for the athlete to get used to the emotions and the track and the technicality. So it's another an added training, and it can really help the athletes if it's done correctly, because the body at one point kind of is going to almost feel the same. Imagine all the training you can add, all the training you can add, not being on the track. So that's one thing, but you need to differentiate also two type of visualization, because to also make sure that the visualization you're going to do is not going to be negative for you on the track, because there are two types. More types, but I want to divide just in two to make it simple. First, visualizations more focused on feelings and emotions. And it's okay if it's not time exactly as reality. Reality may be the race, it's 1 minute, but your visualization is going to be maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes. It's okay, because we're really focused on emotions and all that part, feelings and emotions. It's okay. But whenever we're going to do visualization about technicality, the gesture, the action step by step, the finger here, the right and there, the head on the left, on the right, this has to be as close as possible as the reality. Because if you you do visualization and you do technical visualization and the timing is too far from reality, then when the athlete is going to go and train, it's going to be messed up. It's actually going to do the all opposite. So those are kind of the two big part of visualization.
So you're mirroring the experience
Yes.
before the event. I know in rugby what they do, what internationals at the highest levels will do is the coaches will prepare plans for every eventuality, right? So Ireland are
Yeah.
playing the All Blacks this weekend. What happens if the All Blacks score 3 tries in the opening 10 minutes? What happens if we go 15-0 up? What happens, et cetera, et cetera? So every scenario has been brought into the equation, and there's a plan to deal
Yeah.
with everything, because the shock it can be very, very detrimental to the athlete. So what's your perspective, I know, on the fear of failure and coping with failure, right? So do you find athletes will come to you and say, they'll have an enormous amount of pre-performance failure anxiety, right?
Yeah.
They're dreading competing in case they fail.
This topic could be so much different for every athlete, every person. We have different perception of the importance of failure. So
Mm.
I'm gonna work a lot on the perception of failure. Um, I'm gonna work a lot of on what's the importance of failure. How important is it? What are the consequences? What are the worst that can happen? What are, and then we go far and far away, and at one point we identify with the athlete. Could be easy, could be a long, could be take few sessions, a few months. It's really the acceptance. It's not the avoidance. It's like if I have a distraction, if I think about negative things, if I think about, and you talked about what can happen badly if I get injured, if I finish 10 piece of instead of first, it's to accept. There is
Okay.
a whole idea of acceptance. You need to accept it's okay. You need to accept that you can fail. Doesn't define you. If I at my work, I don't do something well, I'm still the same guy. I still have the same values. Doesn't define me. You're here to love, to enjoy, to be happy, to have pleasure. And if something goes wrong, it's okay. Doesn't define you. So those are the key topics. We can go on and on about that. I love those kind of topics, but I try to focus on that.
Well, I mean, there is no success without failure. I mean, that's the key ingredient as well,
Of
right?
course,
So,
you've not been buried. You've been planted. That's how I see it. And I try to go on those kind of talk and conversations with the athletes.
well, it wasn't it Churchill that said success is the ability to go from one failure to another without the loss of enthusiasm,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And
right?
you learn so much more from failure, so much more.
Mm-mm. Okay, so in terms of the effectiveness of your interventions, right? So, how do you measure the effectiveness of the work that you're doing?
First of all, okay, I'll be as honest. we need to see some results. Okay, the athlete needs to feel that they can control better things. They have more tools in their mental toolbox. They need to feel that they are more positive, that they feel less stress on the morning when they wake up. They feel that whenever they are racing, they are less afraid about what could happen. The way they react and they get up from a failure, it's actually better because they have a different perception, because they have a different attitude. Maybe because each time there is a negativity, they use that switch thing and they change into positivity. So it's a lot about also the internal feeling of the athlete. Do they feel better? Do they feel happier? Um, do they feel that they control more what's happening in their sports career at any moment? So that's a big thing. If we improve that, and if they train correctly on the physical side and the tactical side, obviously that's key. At one point, they're going to be an improvement of performance if we manage to improve that. So I know my answer is kind of here and there because it's not a science, but first, well being, happiness, control, and then let's see if we can improve those performances.
Okay. Um, how long? So, say you take on a client tomorrow. What are you talking? 5 weeks, 10 weeks, 2 months, 3 months? What does the initial work span look like?
More long term is the goal. So obviously, the goal is to work with an athlete at least during the season. Usually, their season can last 6 months, 7 months, maybe eight, maybe less, depending on what sport. But it's to work with the athlete during the whole season. That's the goal. Now, when I don't know the athlete doesn't know me, it's hard for them to say, okay, let's work for the next year together. It doesn't work like that.
Mm,
But what I ask to my athletes, and it's an ask, and actually I wouldn't work with an athlete for less than that. At least minimum of 3 months together, 3 to 6 months. We can't fix that in 2 sessions, in 2 weeks. So, for example, if it's 3 months, we will do 3 sessions per month, 9 sessions. But the goal is to work with an athlete the whole seasons. Because for some athletes, some blockers, we could fix it in 3, 4, 5 months. For others, could take 3 years.
mm.
So, the long term is the short answer.
Are there developments or innovations coming down the track in the field of mental coaching that you're excited by? Who would you point to as kind of the godfather or the godmother of who inspired you, I suppose is the question, and
Um,
what's coming down the track?
um, so, about who inspired me,
Hmm.
um, I'm going to talk about a French guy. I'm a French guy, so I'm going to talk about another French guy. But that's so when I started to be extremely interested, passionate, and to realize, why not? That's what I
Hmm.
love. That's what I believe I'm good at. Now, who to follow, who to read. So there is this guy. He's one of the most known mental coach actually in France and in other some countries, but France mainly. His name is Thomas Samut, and he 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 became famous because I'm not gonna say he invented something, but he started something different. He used to be a swimmer, good swimmer, but not Olympic level swimmer, and he started to coach and mental coach this club, the most famous club of swimmer in France, in Marseille, le Cercle des Nageurs de Marseille. So he started to coach those guys, Camille Lacour, Alain Bernard, Manodou, those guys that, thanks also to him and his support and his coaching, won so many world medals, gold medals, uh, because his vision and his focus wasn't just performance, the numbers, the hard training, the on and on and on, and to get something you need to train hard. He focused first on the well-being of the athlete, on the happiness of the athlete, on to make sure the athlete was happy to be in the swimming pool, that he was happy to be there for the right reasons. So he really focused on that because, as he says, and I really believe in that, uh, long term. long term, happiness, well-being, pleasure to be there. From that, that will bring the performances. The opposite, I don't believe in it long term. On the short term, hard work, hard work, hard work, and no pleasure brings the performance. Middle long term, that can bring mental issues. That can bring maybe depression. So he really focused on that. He's kind of my, let's say, role model, Thomas Samut. Now he works with different athletes, different sports, first division of football in France, skiers, swimmers, etc., and so on and so forth. And actually, my training, my license, my certification I got, it's from the training he actually created. So that's he's my guy for now, my main guy.
What I'm hearing there, which is quite interesting, and it applies not just to sport but to everything, is the enjoyment of the process. I would imagine there are a lot of athletes who are they train 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. It becomes exhausting. It becomes
Yep,
stressful. It even becomes boring, and it
yep,
becomes hard.
yep,
And changing the mindset around what you're doing to make it fun and enjoyable would seem
yep.
to be um, a very sensible approach, not just in sport but in business as well. So that's the guy that you're inspired by. What innovations are coming down the track? Where do you think the space will go?
I was talking about that with another mental coach that actually he's really into that. So neuroscience. He would use an app, a software. He would put, a specific, very kind of expensive headphone uh, that you put on the head to the athlete. He will talk about some topics. Again, motivation, anxiety, stress, inner thoughts, self esteem, self confidence, so, etc., etc. And then from those conversation,
Mm.
the you can get data. You can get data, so you can understand. Okay, what's the brain is telling me? What's the brain is exactly telling me in terms of data? Where can I trigger? Going way deeper. So it's data, it's science, and that he works this way. He has the app, he has the data. It's extremely. He has the Excel, and that could be the future. Am I gonna use it at one point? I don't know. That's not my first focus, but this is really something that's coming. Yeah.
So the performer would be the athlete would have a headset on, which would be monitoring brain activity all through the
Yes.
training and all through the
Yes.
performance.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. I want to ask you about right the business side. Okay,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
you're essentially a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
So you started out with this idea. What were the
Yep.
first steps you took on this
Um.
journey?
So yeah. So I have actually on my situation right now. So as I moved to Vietnam 3 months ago, my main job is I'm a recruiting consultant for a big British company, and on the side, I'm an entrepreneur. I try to grow the business like that. Myself, the way I do things, go and ask questions to people that know, ask questions that people that are already mental coach, already this, already that they know the job, they did the certification, they already went through the hard part of how to do the pricing, how to create your the society legally, how to find the athletes. Ask the questions first, and before doing any planning, because don't do a map, don't do a business strategy map, a planning if you don't know much of the story. So that's what I did. I boldness, not just here, boldness in the attitude. Uh, Go ask people questions, contact. I asked so much. I contacted so much people on LinkedIn that they didn't know me for some help, for some support. Ask people questions, identify who could be good at, and that's how I found the certification, the license I did. So ask questions, go for it, even if you don't know. That's the first thing. Ask questions, get the knowledge, get the knowledge, get the knowledge, get the knowledge. Then make some choices. That's the first steps.
Okay, so what you did first is you got the qualifications,
Yeah,
then you reached out to build your network,
yeah.
right, in the field. The big turning point at the start of any solopreneur or entrepreneur business is your first few clients,
Yeah.
right? How did you get
Yeah.
your first few clients?
So actually, I started to work with athletes while I was doing the certification.
Okay.
Um, I contacting people again. How to find my first clients? Network. My network. Do you know? This is my plan. This is what I want to do. You know? Do you know athletes? Do you know people in the sport industry? Do you know? Do you know anybody? Oh yeah, I know. Contact him. That can contact him. Use your network. Even if you have two-person, maybe two-person can know four-person. So the network. Um, how to have your first clients? Usually it's the network. My uh, two, my only two first athletes network, and the rest as I worked in sales before with you, that's how I know you, Connor. Prospection, sales prospection. I
Okay.
contacted, the last 2 months, I contacted maybe 100 athletes, and that's how I found the others. Yeah,
So you reached out to all of the athletes, which I think there's a great lesson. There are great lessons here for anybody starting out in any business. Um,
yeah,
and you volunteered, basically. You asked them, do they need help?
yeah,
And you said, look, I can help you. I'm a trained mental coach.
yeah,
Um, would you be interested? That's
yeah,
that's really interesting, because that's your sales background coming in, using it, your
yeah,
networking experience to help build a business.
yeah, yeah,
So, in terms of scaling the
yeah.
business, what does that look like? What's your ambitions in terms of scaling? Would you want to work with 100 athletes a year, or how does it? What does it look like?
Good question. Um, so I'll share with you this nice small story. Um, Before scaling, I think you need to have a kind of a first target, a first goal, that that big step that will give you so much energy that will make you think, okay, I got there. Now it's time to I got there. Okay, I can do it. Now I can scale. So one not 1 year ago, a few months ago, when I left Paris for Saigon, where I live now, um, I I actually one of my last days I looked. So I looked at I was on a boat on the Seine. I looked at the Eiffel Tower because we're gonna have the Olympics in 2024 in July. I used to look at the Eiffel Tower and I say, "Big lady, in 1 year, I come back with an athlete that is doing the Olympics." So the first big step is to get that athlete, to get that. First of all, it's such a nice feeling. So get that first step, and then for me, what's the goal? How to scale? The big thing I will need is so to live as a mental coach properly. Uh, One of the things is to get to work with a club, an association, a sports club, because it's a monthly, it's security.
Mm,
Because you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you have athletes, sometimes you don't have. So of course, if you work with big athletes, maybe it's bigger money. They are sponsored a sports club because it brings security to my business. So more and more athletes belonging to a club, an association, why not a national federation? Haha, the big dream. So how I would like to scale in sport. But then my strategy is to use my sport experience, successes to then enter the job market to actually, because what I do, I think I really believe I can do it with executives, senior level vice presidents, country managers, whatever, because they go through so much also responsibility, pressure. So what I do with my athletes at one point to also have a healthy business, a growing business, to work with those kind of clients.
do you think there are parallels between what an executive experiences and what a high performing athlete experiences? What do you think those similarities are? You
Definitely,
touched on it a little bit
definitely,
there.
definitely, because performance, result, performance, result. Um, sometimes the pressure of your colleagues, the pressure of your partners. Now we talk about work,
Mm.
industry, companies, pressure of the stakeholders, the internal stakeholders, your colleagues, your director, your CEO, pressure of the external stakeholders, the sponsor, the partners, your clients, your products.
Investors.
So all that pressure, all that pressure linked to result, linked to performance, definitely a huge link with sport.
What I was hearing when you were talking is you were mentioning the importance of feeling good in what you do on a day-to-day basis, right? And my suspicion is that in the business space, in the corporate world, in the executive space, where they may be working 9, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, that there is a comparison to be had.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and there is work for executives that could be done in terms of well-being, and feeling confident and enjoying what they do, as opposed to it being a grind on a
yeah,
day-to-day basis.
yeah. Definitely, and in comparison with the sport athletes, whatever it's professional athletes, semi-professional, even amateur, it's I am okay with what's happening. I am okay with the way I train. I am okay with the way I communicate with my coach. I am okay with how the whole thing is working. The same thing with an executive or from it. Am I okay the way I manage people? Am I okay about the pressure that my boss is putting on me, that I put on my employees and my sales rep and my people? Am I okay with that? Does that make me happy? What's the how much stress it gives me? Do I bring that do I bring that home? Does it impact my my personal life? Does it impact my family? Does it impact my kids? Does it impact my partner? How can I make it so it doesn't impact those people at home and it impact less my stress, my well-being? How can I what can I change? So there is also similarities with the athletes. So those topics definitely are topics that as a mental coach I can support, I can help, and I definitely want to do that in the future. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Benjamin Benois. Thank you.